All right. Good afternoon to everyone who has joined this current Zest Wellness webinar called Empowering Tomorrow. What we're going to do is we're going to wait another minute for all of our registrants to log on, get comfortable, maybe get their headphones organized, and then we'll get started with the webinar. And as we're waiting for this moment to go by for everyone to come and join in, let's start with a little bit of a mindfulness moment. So some self-reflective questions to ask yourself right now is how are you feeling right now? How does your back feel when you sit up straight? How is your breathing? Can you hear anything in your environment other than what might be coming in your headphones or from this webinar? What do your feet feel like against the ground right now as you're sitting and listening to this webinar? So by asking ourselves these questions, we help center ourselves. That way we bring ourselves into the present moment and take full advantage of this webinar. So with that said, that was our little mindfulness moment. And now that we have a sufficient number of attendees who have come to join us, let's get started. And so what we want to first and foremost disclose during our webinars or during the different health topics that we introduce is that our intentions are to share best practices and to be the gateway between professional advice, individualized advice, with our intentions of following best practices. And so that's why we always include a disclaimer for topics like this, just to keep our mindset when we have webinars like this. So what we're going to do today is we're first going to set the stage for what is exactly this next hour together, Empowering Tomorrow, going to be all about. We're going to share our commitment as far as how this webinar from Zest Wellness and Colonial Group International fits into the wellness program as a whole, and why this topic is of interest as far as the needs and wants. And then, of course, what we will come here today for is to hear from our panelists, hear from their knowledge, what they've learned from the research, what they've learned from their experiences, what they've learned from their colleagues. And that way we can try to apply that to our lives and help create our best possible selves. How can we take what they're mentioning and create healthy habits for us? And so here we go to set our stage right now for a topic like this. We want to first start with a few definitions. So we've included with an overall definition of well-being, and we've also included with an overall definition of mental health, which a lot of this webinar will entail of really clarifying what exactly is mental health, what is it not, and what does it mean for an individual to be happy, to be thriving, and to overall be resistant, especially in unique public health times like this. We like to ask questions at the beginning of webinars like this and gain audience feedback. And so our question we have from this slide, if everyone wants to put in the chat box, and we look at everything afterwards, is what does a healthy workplace culture look like to you? Also, what does a healthy workplace culture feel like to you? And as you maybe put in the chat box your answers to these questions and these thoughts, when we hear from our panelists, we can then think, okay, what's been said right now, everything like mental health, healthy workplace practices, healthy relationships, this helps build our workplace culture. That way we can work well together. And so here's a few definitions to help us with our mindset moving forward. And then as well, you'll see a theme that our panelists will bring up is what is referred to as the mental health continuum. And so if individuals are listening right now and you think, what is at least one takeaway from our webinar today from these panelists, is that there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. And so especially for all the managers who are listening right now, by using a superpower like empathy or listening or acknowledging or recognition or fairness, that could be the small step that makes a leap for someone's mental health. And by no means do you have to have the answers. And sometimes the greatest answer is caring, most of all. So with that said, we wanted to start off with some definitions, share the mental health continuum, because you don't have to be unwell to take care of your mental health. And so it's okay to not be okay. And we know that we can still thrive in our day-to-day with help from others, support from others, to be our best selves. So we want to introduce the mental health continuum. And when we share the recording of this, everyone will be able to have access to this. And even if you want to take a screenshot of this right now, because this is a nice theme of our webinar today. So with that said, on behalf of the entire Zest Wellness team, from our Zest Wellness leadership to our Zest Wellness marketing, to every other individual, coordinators, nurses, everyone else, Jacqueline, Ali, Donovan, Naval, Katie, Glenn, it's our pleasure to deliver these webinars. And on that note, we're going to bring it on to Donovan, who's also going to now set the tone of why this webinar plays into the whole Zest Wellness strategy, and then conduct our panel discussion. So Donovan, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Nathan. Thank you for that somber, relaxing introduction thus far. And as we continue on with this webinar, my hopes is that as you are sitting, you are listening, and you are enjoying, that you take a few breaths, you take deep breaths in and deep breaths out. We have a lot of exciting information for you today. It's important for me to establish that our CEO is committed towards wellness from a colonial standpoint, and she goes on record on a quote to say, our unique wellness plan, Zest Wellness, is producing amazing results that make it all worthwhile. We will continue to balance a healthy plan dedicated to giving members the care they deserve with the support they need to make positive lifestyle changes. And this webinar is a true example of enhancing individuals' mindset so that we can combat mental health issues. It's also important for us to establish the Zest Wellness platform. Our Zest Wellness platform is a unique platform that allows persons to connect digitally. It provides personalized member experiences. In fact, members can log in many digital resources from a mobile phone, a tablet, and a desktop computer. The concept of it is a gamification, which allows points and challenges to ensure engagement across the platform, and individuals are invited to add 10 friends and family members to participate with them. We create specific healthy habits and coaching for reducing stress and improving energy and focus. We are committed to wellness, and Colonial stands with you. So without further ado, I'm joined by the brains of the operation, and I have the extreme pleasure of introducing each of our panelists today. And in no particular order, I'll start with Dr. Rayner. Dr. Rayner is a registered clinical psychologist on the island of Bermuda, born and raised in Bermuda. Dr. Rayner is active in the psychological community. Currently, she serves as a secretary to the Bermuda Psychological Association, in addition to serving as a member of the Bermuda Parole Board. Dr. Rayner is employed by the Bermuda Hospitals Board as a clinical psychologist and has served as a member of the Bermuda Hospitals Board Ethics Committee. Next, we have Dr. Alexandra Bodden. Dr. Alexandra Bodden is licensed as a psychologist in the Cayman Islands and Maryland, USA. She holds an associate's degree in social studies from UCCI, a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Virginia, a master's and doctoral degree in clinical psychology, as well as a postdoctoral master's degree in clinical psychopharmacology from Nova Southeastern University. and additionally, a master's degree in general psychology from New York University. For the past 11 years, she has worked specializing with persons who have experiences of abuse and violence, persons with substance use difficulties, and also persons with severe and persistent mental illnesses. She works at on-course Cayman Islands. Dr. Bodden provides individuals with group therapy, conduct psychology assessments for adults, adolescents, and children. Next, we have Dr. Janette Martin. Dr. Martin, her qualifications include a registered nurse certificate, a bachelor's degree in biology, and a minor in theology from the College of St. Benedict, and a master's degree in counseling studies from Capella University. Her clinical experiences with people who need life transformation and support because of physical, mental, and environmental conditions have led her to personal desires to complete a doctoral study in human behavior with Capella University. She works in behavioral health and plays a vital role in the success of national health and wellness programs like Get Well Bahamas. So guys, without further ado, our panelists, and we thank you guys for joining us today. All right. So I'm going to go straight into the questions. So without any further ado, I'm going to direct the first question to Dr. Martin. Dr. Martin, with so many of our SAS members expressing that they have been financially impacted by COVID-19, i.e. removal of a stable income, and quite possibly the removal of medical care, what would be your advice to them?
Okay, well, with job losses, we have persons with a mental shift, physical shift. Some employers would probably have dropped some of their coverage in sponsored programs. And so what I would suggest to persons is to seek additional medical coverage through the National Health Insurance Program. Advise yourself, seek information on other programs that can assist you with your medical care. One thing I would really like to stress is that what I would like to stress to persons is that they practice good personal medical self-care. And that starts with knowing your healthcare provider, knowing your healthcare needs, and seeking out additional information about your healthcare needs so that you can practice personal medical self-care. Learn about your national health insurance benefits apart from the private healthcare benefits, and see if you can be registered to receive additional benefits. Another area I would like to advise persons to look into is to learn other skills, personal skills for reducing healthcare costs, like over-the-counter medication, speaking with their healthcare providers to substitute maybe a prescription med for an over-the-counter. And lastly, what I would like to advise persons to do is to practice mindfulness in the areas of nutrition, regular physical exercise, and learning ways to manage your stress. Because during these times of uncertainty, there are many stresses that we're faced with. And how do we, find ways to mindfully refocus your thoughts, focus on what you're putting into your body? Because if you have a health condition, you want to ensure that you're not exacerbating that health condition. And so by mindfully seeking ways to self-care, ask questions, to partner with your healthcare provider, to see how your fees can be reduced in certain areas. All of these areas help to empower you and to encourage a mindful and a healthy way forward in these uncertain times.
Thank you for that. And mindfulness does stick out of that entire conversation. And that word is a big word now. It's very popular nowadays. In fact, I was listening to a podcast and it was with a psychologist, and she mentioned that over the course of COVID-19, it's just now that employers and employees see the importance of a mental health program or a mental health expert working in workforces. In fact, we also did a survey, question number 5, Nathan, if you don't mind. It was a question to some of our client groups. We had a very good response from this survey. What we determined from a question that was posed to them, the question is, in your opinion, does your organization demonstrate a commitment, foster support, and open conversations about mental health at all levels of management? In fact, the response was that 53% of employees felt that their employers were doing a good job. And that's a good response. Now, I'm going to direct the next question to Dr. Bodden. Dr. Bodden, in your opinion, what advice do you give to parents working from home and feeling the burden of also having to manage children and work?
Yeah, no, this is definitely a tough one, and one I've been hearing a lot about since we've all been moved to working from home. And the first thing that I would recommend is to go easy on yourself. I hear so many parents that are feeling overwhelmed. People alone from working from home has been difficult, but when you're trying to manage children as well, it can be very overwhelming. So the first thing is take a breath and try to just stick to a schedule to start with. Kids and humans in general work better when we know what to expect. So if they normally get up and have breakfast before they go to school, go ahead, get them up, let them have breakfast, and then I'd say set aside somewhere for them to be able to do their work. So similar strategies I often discuss with my adults is have a set place, right? So that's going to be where they do their schoolwork. Let them keep their school books there, let them have everything set up so they know when they're there, they're able to focus. Stick with the schedule, with the lunchtime, snack time if you're able to, and that will help keep them in a best routine as possible. And that will help with helping them with focusing. Try to get outside. If you can get them outside, let them get some exercise in. That's a great way to burn off a lot of energy and be able to let them be kids in the midst of all of this, which is really important. As well as with empathizing with a lot of the feelings, right? All of us are feeling stress right now. And so a lot of the kids in particular, a lot of them, though, a lot of the ones I work with thought it was great the first couple of weeks that they didn't have to go to school. But then it kind of sets in that they miss their friends, they miss being able to see them, they miss being able to hang out with them. So getting them outside gives a way of burning off some of the stress, and I'd say helping them connect with friends through things like social media and the technology that we have. I've got a lot of friends that have their kids and they'll go and they'll drive by and wave at them for their birthday and things like that. So finding unique ways of helping the kids stay connected as well can be really helpful for them. And lastly, be flexible, right? It's not going to be perfect. I saw something the other day about working from home. They said you're not working from home, you're at home working during a crisis. And I would say the same thing to parents. You are not homeschooling your kids, you're at home schooling them during a crisis. So go easy on yourself and be flexible. If the 8 o'clock start time you normally have with school isn't working, 7:30 is okay, 9 o'clock is okay. Find what works for you and for your kids and for your family, because ultimately your mom, your dad, and that's your main role. Get support if you need, but be flexible and go easy on yourself. So there's no hard and fast rules. A lot of the schools will actually help with extra support if you need. So I'd say reach out if you have any questions on how it's working. I know our government has been working if there's issues with technology. We have a lot of kids that didn't have tablets or computers. So I'd say if something's missing or something's not working, reach out for help as well.
Okay, I like that. I like the comment you made when you said, go easy on yourself. A lot of times we forget to go easy on ourselves. Even in a time of crisis, we still feel panic, we still feel rushed, we feel nervous, we feel just disoriented in a lot of ways. And that comment does resonate. And I'm going to jump straight into our next question because this is really a continuation of that previous question. So Dr. Rayner, this one is for you. There are reports that about 99% of the world's children are now living in some form of pandemic-related limit on movement. What advice do you give to parents to explain this new form of normalcy?
Sure, thank you. And I agree. Many of my comments do echo Dr. Bodden. I think it's important for us to remember that our young people have had to navigate a multitude of changes during this health pandemic. They've gone from, as you say, social isolation and lockdown, transitioning to homeschooling, developing an expertise in technology, although I beg to say some teenagers probably are more expert in these technologies than any of us are. They've also had to have separation from their social groups. And we sometimes forget that young people can have the same frustrations and anxieties that adults have. And then our young people are sometimes just suffering from plain boredom as well. So I think it's important that as parents and the adults in their lives, we share accurate information with our young people about what is going on, how do they protect themselves, how do they look after their health and mental health. And our local child clinics and mental health clinics can have some really good resources on how to share this information in an age-appropriate way. What we share with a 5-year-old will be different to what we share with a 10-year-old, and then different to what we share with a teenager. So making sure you're getting the appropriate age information is important as well. And then some of the same things that Dr. Bodden said, again, be very helpful as far as setting that structure and that routine that fits in with the family's needs. Maintaining those social connections is very important. And just have fun. You know, look at the games you can play with the family, getting outside, learning a new skill together. That's something that I've noticed with not just friends, but folks that I work with, is they're learning new things with their children, and so creating different bonds with their children as well. So that's an excellent opportunity.
Yeah, and definitely that those bonding experiences, we should definitely take advantage of those things right now. And I'm going to ask Dr. Bodden, do you recommend times of self-isolation?
Yeah, this is one that I'm going to say, I'm going to answer a couple of different ways if that's all right. I do think that especially now, times for the downtime to practice the things like the meditation and the mindfulness are really important. And it's important to take a break from everything, check in with ourselves, and give our mind and body some time to relax. I tell my clients and anyone I speak to that even if you're not feeling stressed or anxious, your body's going to be responding to what's going on around you anyway. And so the little downtimes are a break for you and a chance to check in with yourself to see how you're actually doing. How are you really feeling about what's happening? Sometimes we get so caught up in what we still have to do for the day and just going from thing to thing that we never really take time to slow down and self-reflect. So I think it's really important to have those little check-ins and some self-care, and it doesn't have to be 30 minutes. I've got some clients that can meditate for 30 minutes, and I think that's amazing because it's really hard. It might start with just 2 or 3 minutes at a time. And it might be traditional, mindfulness practice with deep breathing. It might be spending time in the garden and looking at all the things maybe you and your children planted, like Dr. Rayner was talking about. Or just appreciating nature. I think one of my favorite things right now is actually watching the sunsets. When I was at the office, I couldn't do that. So that's something I've been trying to appreciate during this. So I think those moments for self-care are really important, and the downtime, especially for people who are at home, and everyone has been stuck at home. We're still at shelter in place. We're slowly coming out of it, but we've had that those orders in place for a few months now. But especially people who have a lot of people in the house, I especially recommend some time alone, even if it's just going for a walk, getting outside, just something to allow your body just to calm down and recenter. I would say the caveat's going to be if it is coming to a place of withdrawal and isolation as opposed to kind of self-care time, that clients that I work with a history of depression who tend to self-isolate, those are the ones I would be more cautious with. And so if you notice yourself avoiding things and pulling back from people, then that's going to be a sign that they might want to look into getting some extra care, some support. Likewise, if you notice it in a family member, maybe reaching out to them and just checking in with them to see how they're feeling. Because a lot of times when we start to feel depressed, which times of major change and uncertainty can bring that up, whether it's first time or recurrence. And so if you notice yourself pulling back and avoiding people and not being able to do the things you used to do or enjoy the things you used to do, that would be a sign for me that it might be time to look at getting some extra support in there, whether looking at a therapist or connecting with a psychiatrist, to try to catch that before it goes too far. So alone time is good, but if you notice that you are using it more as an avoidance as opposed to a break, then that would be a sign for me that you might want to reach out and get some help.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to direct the next question to both Dr. Martin and Dr. Rayner. I'll start with Dr. Martin first. And here's the question. Uncertainty, the big word right now. You know, we're working from home, times of change, there's so much things changing every second. In fact, what information is relevant today is not necessarily relevant tomorrow, and it certainly plays a big factor in our hearts. But uncertainty seems to be the word everyone is now forced to simply deal with. What coping tips can you give each of our listeners?
Okay, I'll start first.
Okay.
What I would say to persons is that identify your feelings, identify triggers in your life, sit still, and in order to do this, you have to be still long enough to really identify what is going on inside of you and feel those feelings. And from those feelings, you can begin to listen to your thoughts and reframe any negative thoughts that you may be experiencing. Reframe them, continually face your emotions, but reframe the thoughts into healthier thoughts. Focus on areas in your life that you can control. Yes, there is uncertainty, and we cannot control the events that's happening in the environment, but we can control our behaviors. We can control how we respond to what's going on. And in order to do that, we come right back to the same word, practice mindfulness. Live in the moment. Begin to find times of isolation where you're sitting still and you're identifying those thoughts, those anxieties that bring up this uncertainty and uncomfortable feelings, and then focus on what's right in front of you. I could control this. Let me call my bank and let them know that I am not working. Let me call my landlord and let them know that, my salary has been reduced, or I'm not getting a salary right now. These are areas that you can control that would lift some of the stress and lift some of the anxious feelings. Face your emotions. If there's someone in the house with you, because we're all in the home, we may be in a home where there are more than 5 or 10 people for that matter, because some homes are large, some families are large, some are smaller, and we tend to get on each other's nerves sometimes, especially during times of crisis. Sit with that person in the moment. When you are feeling as though they have hurt your feelings, or they may have said, or they're acting in a way that you're not comfortable with, face it head on, but face it, communicate in ways that it's coming from you and you're not pointing a finger at them. You may say something like, I'm feeling as though you are avoiding me. Always let it come from you. And lastly, what I would say to persons is, in order to manage whatever anxieties, we have to sit still with those anxieties. And when we sit still, we're able to think. And when we think, we can reframe those thoughts, those negative thoughts, and we become more peaceful. We find resources that are right in front of us. It may be that same family member who's annoying you. And then you can evaluate those resources that are right in front of you. And your support systems are with you. And then you can find solutions, leaning on the resources and support systems that may be right in your home. But first, I would like to say, deal and focus with what you can control. And that's that bank account, that's that landlord, the credit card company, and make those arrangements. Because at the end of the day, you will feel like you accomplished something, and you accomplished something that you were able to control.
Definitely, communication is definitely most needed in uncertain times, definitely. Dr. Rayner.
No, I agree. Change is the constant right now. That's the one thing we can count on, is that we're going to experience change. And what struck me when faced with this question was just how much access we have right now, or how bombarded we are with information. You know, we have 24-hour news, we have, you know, social media. We're just getting this information overload. And one of my tips, and I use this myself and share this with others, is unplug a bit from the bombardment of information. You know, really set some time limits around how much of the news you're going to take in, and so that you can set that aside and engage in other activities in your life. And in addition to being mindful of what you can control, I think we also need to take some time to practice gratitude. You know, just taking a tip from positive psychology, when we take a moment and really think about what we have experienced and what we can be grateful for, that goes a long way in helping to decrease anxiety and helping to decrease symptoms of depression. And it doesn't take long. You know, just at the end of your day, take a few minutes and think of 3 experiences that you had in your day of which you can be grateful. And that really does help to shift our mindset.
Excellent. And just from a corporate wellness standpoint, I'd like to add in a little bit more as well. Based on our survey response, question number 6, the slide tells us, the question says, again, we had over 400 individuals respond to the survey. The question was, what actions would you like to see your employer take to improve mental health, improve mental well-being for all employees? One of the largest responses was to see wellness as a priority, help employees develop healthy habits. In fact, they also want to know ways in which they can manage their stress and have training on stress management. And they also want offer leadership trainings, and emotional and intelligent trainings are all very crucial. So not just identifying uncertainty for oneself or one's household, but for our employers or management that are joining in, ensuring that workplace wellness is also established, mindfulness is established, and also there are resources for employees to express themselves. Okay. So I'll move into the next question. We actually just passed the half-hour mark. We are on question number 6 thus far, and this one is again back to Dr. Bodden. Dr. Bodden, what suggestions do you have for caregivers and family members of persons diagnosed with mental health issues, and helping these diagnosed individuals to come to grips with the new medical recommendations?
Yeah, I think that this is a great question, and I think especially for family members, it can be quite intimidating if you're not really sure how best to support your family member or your loved one. And so I'd say to start with, follow up with them and their providers. Talk to the providers, make sure that your family member is able to stay in touch with them. A lot of us have moved to telehealth, and so are still available by phone calls or video calls to be able to stay in touch, because they are your client, they are your family member support team. So making sure that they're staying in touch with them, making sure that you talk to them. And generally when I work with family members, I would have everyone in together to come up with a plan, right? To talk about what's going on, make sure the family member understands the mental illness that's going on. Depression is different from anxiety, which is different from a psychotic disorder, which is different from some of like bipolar and some of the other mood disorders as well. So helping the family to understand what's going on, having a plan of what to expect, working with the client if they're able to talk about certain stressors that they foresee coming up, ways that the family members can support them in the coming weeks with everything, all the changes that are going on. And allow them to identify red flags as well. And so if needs be, if there are any concerns that there might be emergency or safety issues, going through with the client as well as with the family member that they trust, a safety plan as well. So keeping the communication, as I heard from the other panelists, is really important, keeping the communication open, making sure that the client, that the family member is comfortable talking to either to you or that they are connected with a support person for that. making sure that if they're on medications, that you are helping to make sure that they always have it. I know that we have gone to an unusual system where you're only allowed at the pharmacy certain days of the week. So making sure that you've got the medications there would be helpful. And keeping social support, that's going to be the biggest protective factor against any kind of stress or mental illness. So helping them find ways that they're able to stay connected. Locally, we've got a few support groups that are now running via telehealth, which I think has been hugely helpful, not only for persons with mental illness, but also for caregivers. And so that's really helpful, keeping the person with the mental illness connected, but as caregivers ourselves as well, to look after, to make sure that you're taking time for your own self-care so that you're able to continue to help them. It can be frustrating, it can be scary, depending on what kind of diagnosis that they are dealing with. So taking time for yourself if needs be, to take a break, do some reading, or connecting with some of your own support people to make sure that you're in a place that you're able to help them. So I'd say knowing the resources available in the community is really helpful, so that, and ahead of time. You don't want to, in a crisis, be looking for phone numbers or emails. So having that kind of stuff ready, and a lot of times the provider that your loved one is working with can help with connecting you to those resources as well.
Yeah.
So I'd say have an understanding of it, have a plan, making sure that you've got medications if necessary, and keeping up the social support and the self-care for your loved one as well as for yourself.
And I guess one of the most important things I think you said too is making sure that you're well taken care of when dealing with someone that has a mental health issue, right?
Right. Well, and if I could add in as well, just if there are questions, so it's going to depend on their level of understanding as well. If they're not certain of what's going on, trying to explain it in a way that's going to make sense to them. And so that in that case, a provider, whether therapist or psychiatrist, may be helpful in explaining the current conditions as well, and the importance of following the guidelines too.
And that actually helps us to segue right into our next question to Dr. Rayner. Dr. Rayner, what are some physical and emotional signs that any of our listeners might be suffering from any poor mental health?
Sure, thank you. So individuals can display a variety of symptoms if they're having challenges with their emotional health. It's not exhaustive, but some of the more common symptoms people experience could be increased periods of low mood or anxiety, changes in their sleep pattern or appetite, difficulty concentrating, maybe increased irritability, or they feel like they're easily angered. And we see this often in children, more so than mood changes, but the irritability will come out in children. Now that we're in isolation to some extent, maybe we've noticed we're increasing our evening alcoholic beverages, or maybe increasing use of other substances as a way of dealing with our daily stress, and general behavior that feels out of character for us. So these are just, again, not exhaustive, but just some commonly reported symptoms that people experience. Definitely encourage folks to reach out for support, whether it's through your employee assistance program or through your local mental health clinic, and even through any wellness support hotlines that have been initiated. Locally in Bermuda, we have started a national wellness hotline that is staffed by mental health clinicians, which provide support, not for mental health emergency situations, but for folks who may be feeling stressed or having worries around their current situation. They can call and speak with a professional to get some support in the moment. So these can be really great resources for folks, but the key is just to reach out and get that support.
Yeah. And again, to go back to our survey, question number 7, we asked our surveys, what do you personally do to improve your mental health? And improving your mental health is something that some of us we're going to have to take into our own hands, I'm assuming, based on your conversation. And most of them responded that they like spending time with family. That's one of our highest responses. Other higher responses will be exercise. I find exercise is one of the best resources for me to combat stress or any mental issues of anxiety or uncertainties. And also they also said that meditation or prayer. In fact, I actually like to take meditation into a regular habit. I pray regularly. But what I encourage persons, like I did at the start, take that deep breath in, a deep breath out. And doing that 2 or 3 times when you feel anxious, uncertain, or nervous tends to work for me. But Dr. Rayner, Dr. Bodden, to go back to this question, what are some suggestions for our listeners that might be suffering from hopelessness or anxiety to help them feel empowered for tomorrow? You see what I did there? I referenced the title.
Love it. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that can do it. It will be echoing some of the ideas already shared. But I think that the first part is going to be focusing on what's in your control, which I believe that Ms. Martin had shared before. And so with this, it's going to be staying in the know as best as you can. I know right now with all the uncertainty of the changing restrictions, it's really hard to know what's going on. And a lot of people I've spoken to have been feeling quite overwhelmed with the uncertainty of the virus, the uncertainty of the restrictions, the difficulties with essentially having government take so much control over what's going on. And with that, they often feel very helpless. And with it having gone on for a while, it can bring up the feelings of being hopeless as well. The uncertainty as well. Humans like to know what's going on. And we don't deal well with uncertainty or not knowing what's happening and not being able to make decisions for ourselves. So focusing on what we are able to do in the situations is often very helpful. So I encourage people to be aware of what the current allowances are. And that's going to be finding good sources of information to be able to know what you're allowed to do, what not. Like we've had exercise limitations of 90 or 120 minutes. I told everyone, this is the loophole. This is your chance to get out, make the most of it. But not being overwhelmed by media either. There is a lot out there, and if we are nervous about what's going on, we tend to overconsume social media especially. So I'd say have enough information to know what you're able to do, get it from a reliable source, then turn it off, right? Don't spend a lot of time going too much into the media, going too much into what's happening. It's really scary, some of the things going on in the world right now. So if you are feeling overwhelmed or anxious, focusing more on what's going on for you right now, and focusing on what you are able to do. So there's a lot of things we can't do right now, but focusing on what you are able to do. If you are feeling like you're just kind of lost in the mix, I've had a lot of clients say that they feel like, the days just kind of run together. Because I've got, some clients that are working harder than ever because they're working from home, and others that aren't able to work because honestly, our island has shut down a few of the industries as protective measures, which are understandable, but that causes the other problem, which is too much time. So either boat, sticking to a schedule, having go ahead, get up, get dressed, even if they can only see you from the shoulders up. Go ahead, get up, get dressed, because that's going to help you to feel better, help you feel more in control, more like yourself, and set a schedule for yourself, even if it seems arbitrary. To have to make sure that you still, maybe get in your walk, which you used to do in the morning, and make sure that you're still having breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So having a schedule for yourself so it feels more like routine, which is where our bodies really thrive, is important. Watching what we eat. There's lots of quarantine jokes about how, does my 600-pound life call me or do I call them? How does this work afterwards? And so, a lot of us are using some of the less helpful coping skills that Dr. Rayner talked about with maybe eating more out of comfort or boredom or stress, right? And so so managing what we eat, when we eat, making sure we are eating, island nations, making sure you're getting enough water. So looking after your basics are really important, making sure that you're getting enough sleep, bringing in the exercise if you're able to. Best way for managing stress, especially the physical aspects that tend to come with it. And so it's a great way to burn off stress, burn off energy, and help you feel more empowered, more active, and actually brings energy, which I think is counterintuitive to some people. If you're feeling tired, to actually get up and go for a walk or even go for a run seems like not the thing that you'd want to be doing, but actually can be most helpful in that time. And going along with focusing on what's in your control is celebrating little things that do come on, practicing some of the gratitude that Dr. Rayner had talked about, looking for the little accomplishments that you're getting through each day. For me, learning this new platform, is an example of a little win for me. So I now have a new one that I can use. but focusing on small successes will be helpful during this time. And of course, the idea of being flexible as well. So even if things are, you may not be as productive you were when you were at the work, but doing the best that you can while you're here. You may not come out with 10 new skills like they're encouraging everyone to do, but finding something that you enjoy and really making the most of the time, right? That's what I've been encouraging people to do, is to look at the opportunities that are coming from it, right? Spending time with the family, spending time with the kids, learning to do some kind of new hobby at home can be a great way of shifting the focus to what can I do, what's within my focus, what's in my control and within my power.
Yeah. And I like the idea of celebrating the small things, because which I missed this year, and even cooking a new meal that you've never cooked before, those things should be celebrated. And I think that helps to encourage persons, you know. But there are times of sadness and disappointment. We've had some losses from a lot of persons dying from COVID-19. In fact, I want to express my condolences to the family of Dr. Judson Enes, a medical physician here in the Bahamas, who lost his life due to COVID-19, and so many others, you know. Many loved ones, friends, and possibly co-workers have passed away because of complications due to COVID-19. And to Dr. Rayner, what words of encouragement can you give to each of these persons who may have lost somebody that they care for?
This is a difficult topic. How do we grieve now during this process? And so many of our grief rituals have shifted because of lockdown or social distancing. We're not able to gather together in our big family groups or participate in burial services. And so we're needing to understand how we grieve and appreciate that it's a natural, a normal process of death, that we need to take that time to look after ourselves, to grieve, to share stories of our lost loved one with friends and family. We need to look at how do we develop new rituals? How do we now celebrate this person's life in a different way so that we can go through that grief process? I think if we're looking at also how do we help each other from an organizational perspective, I know that's the focus really of your Zest Wellness. We've had lots of information come out about how companies can alter their grief leave policies to help accommodate some of the changes right now. Do we offer people increased access to employee assistance or therapy programs? Do we offer people flexible time in their work life to help them accommodate some of their grief processes? So it gives us the opportunity to really show empathy in our work environments as well, to help people grieve.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And Dr. Martin, the World Health Organization suggests that those individuals feeling that their mental health are being impacted should limit smoking, limit alcohol, and the consumption of drugs. But additionally, they should ensure that they have a balanced, healthy lifestyle, food sources high in omega-3s from nuts, oats, whole grains, and high fiber sources, of course, legumes, beans. But most importantly, fruits and vegetables, and exercise. Is this truly enough to protect someone with growing mental health concerns?
So what you mentioned is correct. It is enough. It's not enough, because what we have to focus on, as Dr. Bodden mentioned earlier, about watching what we eat, ensuring that we get a healthy diet, ensuring that we exercise regularly. Feeling good physically positively contributes to our mood, and we know that from studies, and there's been quite a bit of studies done in 2018 that showed that persons who were depressed, a third of those persons who were depressed, once they adhered to a healthy diet and exercise, they no longer showed signs of depression. In addition to that, I don't know if persons are aware, but the Centers for Disease Control depicted that in 2020, depression would become the second leading cause of disability after heart disease. And so we have to look at how we're eating incorporating exercise on a regular basis, and also finding time to meditate, to slow down, to focus on our thoughts, to incorporate gratitude, as Dr. Rayner mentioned and Dr. Bodden mentioned as well. Healthy foods are full of antioxidants, omega-3s, fatty acids, and different vitamins and minerals that boost our immune system. And so that is why the World Health Organization stresses at this time in particular, not that they haven't been stressing it, but in particular, we need to boost our immune system to protect us from the virus and protect us from other bacteria that is out there. And these foods that you mentioned are filled with antioxidants, omega-3s that are heart protective and brain protective as well. They feed our brain. And that is why we get the added benefit of increased mood. We feel better and we feel happier. In addition, exercise improves our self-esteem. It improves our concentration, it improves our attention, and it improves our memory, and also sleep. So lack of sleep, when Dr. Rayner mentioned that when we must notice that when someone is not sleeping well, that can be a contributor to depression or anxiety-related illnesses. Lack of sleep contributes to lack of concentration, lack of attention. And so when we are not attentive and when we're not concentrating, then we need to step back and kind of, focus on what we're eating. Are we exercising? Are we taking that time? And that is why the World Health Organization is stressing at this time for us to focus on a healthy diet that is filled with antioxidants, because it boosts our immune system, it increases brain cell growth, and our physical and gastrointestinal health. And so what I would like to suggest is, yes, it does help. It does help to release chemicals in our brains that contributes to a good mood, but it doesn't take the place of mental health therapies. It works in conjunction with mental health therapies.
And Dr. Bodden, all of you know, we live in Caribbean cultures where it's a stigma to go and see a mental health therapist. I actually had a conversation with someone recently and they're like, I don't need help, because sometimes the therapist leave, But living in societies where people find it difficult to talk about their feelings for many reasons, are there ways individuals can interpret these feelings but also communicate them without having to use talking as a means of communicating?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that is something common throughout the Caribbean, definitely something that we experience here in the Cayman Islands. And so one of the services that we offer is actually equine-assisted psychotherapy. So that's something that I personally do through my private practice, which is where we actually go out and we do different activities with the horses. And with the horses, it creates a very open and very client-centered space that allows the clients to connect with the horses, do different activities with them, and then talk about that experience. What we found is that a lot of times what happens in real life happens in the arena. And it gives us a safe way of talking about it, because it's not that that their boss is bullying them again, or their mother is just is getting on their last nerve. It's this horse is interacting with that horse because this one is getting frustrated with that one. It gives a different way of talking about things and being able to work through things in real time. And that's what I really like about the therapy that we're able to do at the barn. Likewise, I've got several colleagues who also offer alternative or complementary therapies that offer a different way of tapping into the emotions. I've got a friend that's a therapist, but also a yoga instructor. She actually does trauma-informed yoga, which is a way of tapping into the physiological side of stress and anxiety and being able to work through things in that way. On island, we also have music therapy, which is a huge hit with the teenagers.
Right.
If you're able to go in and make music or make songs or share it through either the music or the lyrics, it's a great way to be able to express things without having to be like, I'm so depressed today. Being able to share what they're feeling in other ways and in creative ways. Likewise, we've got people who offer dance or movement therapy as well as art therapy, which are different ways of being able to express it without having to necessarily put words to it for whatever reason. I think that the stigma is a part of it, but I also think that it's not really terminologies that we use as much in Cayman. I did a lot of my training in the States, and there we easily talk about anxiety, depression, PTSD. The words are thrown around quite easily, but not necessarily something that we talk about as much here. So sometimes I think it's stigma and being afraid to talk about it, but I also think we just don't have the words for it.
Yeah.
So the alternative therapies are a great way to be able to express it, share it, process things, and move through it. So I'm definitely a big believer in those. And I would say if talk therapy is not for you, or if it's not working, those can be great alternatives to tap into things. And you might have one of those as well as talk therapy. So there's definitely no right or wrong way to do it. I work very well. I tend to play well with others, as most of us do in the field. If there's something that's going to work for you, then that can be a great way to get another perspective as well. Sometimes things happen at the work that don't happen in the therapy room. So I'm able to provide insights to the other therapists or psychiatrists that are working with the clients based on what's going on. Provide insights to the clients as well. They come up with some really good stuff out there. So there are other ways. It doesn't have to be traditional talk therapy.
And I was excited to hear you say music therapy. I actually am excited about that because I've just listened to a podcast that is suggesting the groundbreaking impact music therapy is having when it comes to getting people to express their feelings without having this. I was very happy for you to mention that as well.
Yeah.
If I might add to Dr. Bodden, I think our religious leaders and spiritual groups can be a really great ally as well in assisting our communities and folks who may be experiencing mental health challenges. Now, in Bermuda, we have a very religious community, and people may be more apt to go to their church or Bible group before they would think about coming to a professional. And so supporting our religious communities in how to assist those with mental health challenges or expressing mental health challenges can be a really great resource as well.
Okay.
And I find that in the Bahamas, we tend to go to our religious community first, and because we are a religious community, and we tend to go to our religious community first. And if our pastor or priest suggests that we see a psychologist, then we would go. But that's the go-to here in the Bahamas, our religious community prayer.
And ladies, so I'm so sorry to cut you, but we're actually at our 1 hour mark, and we are reaching that point where we have to conclude. We only have a few more seconds left. I have one more question to each of you, but if I can get you to respond within 5 seconds each. Let me get you started. No, it's hard, but we'll try our best, okay? So the question to each of you, and I'll start with Dr. Martin first, then Dr. Rayner, and then lastly, Dr. Bodden. Fitness and healthy eating have been a challenge for some and a success for others. Some of us are going to come out champions, and some of us are going to come out not so champion-like. Are there ways we can create mental triggers? If you can express to me ways we can create mental triggers to improve these healthy habits in a few seconds. Dr. Martin, you're first.
Okay, I would say download a fitness app. Everybody is making fitness apps now, and the fitness apps include eating, fitness, workouts. Download a fitness app. Go to Pinterest. Pinterest has numerous fitness moves that you can do. Turn on music, set a SMART goal, 1 a day. Start with 5 minutes and then just add a minute each day. And so get up and walk the dog and don't watch the dog walk.
Yes, that's a good one.
You engage in walking with the dog.
Yes. Dr. Rayner?
Sure. I would say don't get overwhelmed by trying to make too many changes all at once. Pick one habit, one change that you want to make to create a healthy habit, and just focus on mastering that habit. And then you'll find that that'll help build on other habits and other changes that you want to make.
Yeah. Thank you. And Dr. Bodden?
I'd say there's no wrong way to start. If something's not working for you, if the gym's not your thing, that's okay. Try something different, whether it's walking the dog, downloading some dance exercises, maybe signing up for a Zumba class, try different things. Find what's going to work for you. You want it to be fun and something you're going to look forward to and something you can keep up, not something you have to do. So I'd say try different things. I say either you get a new hobby or you hopefully get a good story. So try different things to find what's going to work for you.
Thank you so much, ladies. You guys have been so impactful, so powerful. I think this conversation was delightful. I'm so sorry that the hour came so quickly, but maybe it's a reason that we need to add another phase of a mental health panel discussion, and hopefully we might be able to add that for our members. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nathan, and he's going to close it out.
All right, that was incredible, and we wrote 10 learnings in the chat box from our panelists. If anyone wants to glance at the chat box right now, you can do so and see 10 points of what our panelists have graciously brought up. We are going to adapt to timing right now, as we want to be respectful of everyone's time with the hour. We'll just briefly touch this, as in, what we learned from today is that well-being and mental health, it's a continuum, and there's different types of things we can do. We're trying to build a whole toolbox and put different tools in our toolbox, and it's by movement, nutrition, connecting with others that we can do that. So a nice well-being for our mental health. If you would like to continue this conversation, and as well as your employer to continue this conversation, our Zest Wellness team wakes up every day and we think, what types of resources can we create to continue conversations like this and spark action for individuals in their respective organizations. And so feel free to reach out to us through email, through social media, through your respective Zest Wellness coordinator, and we can share with you how we've tried to act on these and what you can actually give to employees to help support them during this time. And then lastly here, we always like to give information, as Donovan alluded to earlier, through our Zest Wellness platform, as well as our custom Zest Wellness blog, and then Zest Wellness social media pages. So with that said, we're now wrapping up our Empowering Tomorrow webinar. And to each and every one of you, thank you for tuning in. You took one step towards your mental health today, but in reality, you took one giant leap. So respect to all of you. Thank you to our panelists. And on that note, we are finished the Empowering Tomorrow webinar. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you as well.
Okay, let's see.
Ladies, it was a pleasure working with you.
Same here.
Yes.